set?
I think so. He told me to tap something. But you can hear me pretty good, right? So we're good? Well, I'm getting elevated here, too. It's pretty comfortable up here. Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now this very small. Okay. Here's the mountain. Why don't we open up Genesis chapter 8? I did this last year, but some of you are new. I don't know you. I can see some new faces. And we are in the land of Noah. We were there 2 years ago. And Genesis chapter 8 discusses Mount Ararat, and I'll explain to you why I think that Mount Ararat is the mountain which landed Turkey, and then people is just the God. God. Is that better? I hope so. Yeah, so that's caused a wind, and the water subsided. Wow, boy, that'll get you woken up this morning. Also, the mountains of the closed, and years ago, underneath. Mountains of the deep, they made a joke with it. Scientifically, on the other side, it was pretty bad. By the way, the flood. Off the dam. What we call it was coming out of an old landscape. Verse 3, the water receded steadily from the 7th month on the mountain. The Hebrew is plural, it's clear. We talked about this, and there has to be apparently several mountains around. Well, if you look at Mount Ararat, there's 2 mountains there. So you have Big Ararat, you have Little Ararat. So that's not a problem. We got plural, and it matches just perfectly.
I'm afraid that was just not going to work for you.
So you're going to make me work some more here?
Yeah.
Oh, so I do have to have something in my ear then.
Yeah. It feels like that.
Okay. Now, does that work?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So now where was I now? Oh, on the mountain of Ararat here. So there is 2 mountains there. It's not a problem. So it matches the Hebrew. I think Todd was at Sun River here last week. They called it the Three Sisters. Actually, there's like 5 volcanoes in the same area. They're all pretty tall. So this is really not a problem. It matches the verses here. And then, but you keep reading. This is very interesting. Verse 4, in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested again in the mountains of Ararat. Verse 5 especially, the water decreased steadily until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains became visible. So what you have here is that Noah does not see the other mountains until 2-3 months later. So that tells you whatever mountain that he landed on, that ark landed on, had to be a very tall mountain. Huge. And Mount Ararat fits the bill. Okay, these other places they talk about in Turkey and in Iran, the mountains are too small. And the other mountains actually dominate around the area. So only Mount Ararat in that area can really, it fits the landscape. It's a huge mountain. It dominates everything like Mount Rainier. In fact, Mount Ararat does make Mount Rainier look a little small, and that's not easy to do. It's a huge mountain and beautiful mountain. You can see a flat spot on this other side right here in the north. When you drive around to the north side of the country of Armenia, you can see that north side of that mountain. It's very flat. You could look something you want to put something there, like you could put a big boat up there without a problem. So I think the traditional view that Mount Ararat is probably the correct view, and it matches the landscape. And as we lived there for a couple years, it seems to be the best explanation, I think, of where that ark landed. Now, whether or not they can find it, that's another story. I mean, that's all, maybe some remnants of whatever's left. They probably used a lot of the ark to rebuild whatever they wanted to rebuild after they got off that thing. But there is a problem. You got to carry that stuff down. Now, that's not easy off of a mountainside. So it's kind of hard to say exactly what is up there, if anything. So we returned to Armenia after being home for 15 years in Olympia, Washington. We established a new church in Olympia called Grace Redeemer Bible Church. Before that, we were 6 years in Ukraine working with Jim Myers. And then before that, we were 1 year with Village Ministries International in Belarus. So we started to see some things at our own church with regard to Discipleship Makers Multiplied, a new mission group I started to work with. And we started to do some fun and good things in Ukraine. And so we decided, as we see things develop in Ukraine, also in Belarus and other places, that maybe we need to return back to the mission field. The problem is I didn't have someone to replace me. And then the Lord provided a young man named Andy Stacy. He went to Grace School of Theology. He's graduated from that Bible college now, and he's doing a great job last 2 years. So he filled the pastoral hole that we would leave, and he's done a really good job. So we need some prayers over there in Olympia too, by the way. Olympia, of course, is run by Seattle. It's acts like it's its own town, but it's run by Seattle. That's, of course, if things would have continued run by the Chapastani people, they were taking over there in downtown Seattle. That could have been true in Olympia too. But anyway, it's good that they closed that thing down for a while, and Olympia needs a lot of prayer. So our state's in big trouble, all kinds of ways. City of Seattle went to the edge of the abyss, here about a month ago. The bottomless pit, that's what it's described. Sometimes we've heard, that there's no bottom. Well, the Bible says it's called the bottomless pit. Think about that. Is there a bottom for people? I don't know. We just see our country, just continue to fall. And of course, the old AA meetings, the drunk people and the narcotics and all the struggles they have, there's like a bottom that they hit and they find they wake up. Well, interesting times we live in, very serious times. And we need to be praying for our country and pray for Olympia, Washington. Anyway, we returned before all the negative, real bad stuff occurred to Armenia. And I'm not sure I can show you where that is. It's kind of small, and I don't have a laser, but it's way south here of Russia. It's a very small country. And you can see Turkey to the west of us. There's Azerbaijan to the east of us. Then you have Georgia and Russia to the north. To the south is Iran. So they're pretty much surrounded by enemies, but they do have a strong Russian background, Soviet background. And so they do speak a lot of Russian there, and that enabled us to be able to go in there without too much trouble, without too much culture shock. And it was very Soviet there too. So things were, they were run by the Soviet Union, so things are very Soviet, and yes. Oh, it does. That's okay. Where? Right here? Is that a pointer? Oh, okay. Got it. Top one? Okay, yeah, so it's right here. So, and the capital city is Yerevan. 1 million people live there. The small country is pretty small, about the size of western Washington. And Yerevan has about 1 million people. 3 million live in the country. And there it is in the middle of the Middle East, like Israel. It's had a very difficult past. They were persecuted at the end of World War I, the first genocide of the 20th century. 1.5 million Armenians, conservative estimate, were killed after World War I by the Turks. And, Germans were involved with that too, by the way, in World War I in some kind of sinister ways, interesting ways. And then, of course, World War II, you have Israel, and they have the Holocaust, and out of the Holocaust comes their own state. Well, the same thing happened with Armenia. They got their own state back after 700 years of being without a state. They got their state back, so they have independence, but then the Soviets came and took it over, and then they didn't get their full independence until after the Soviet Union collapsed. So there's a big history there. And Armenia is one of the first countries in the world to become Christian. They're very proud of that. In fact, they are the first country to become a Christian nation. And very interesting. I'll give you some slides to show you some of the history of that. But Armenia is a very interesting place. And the reason why we went there is because my wife worked at the Kiev International School in Ukraine many years ago. And Quality Schools International was a group that they have schools all over the former Soviet Union. So when we decided to go back to the mission field, we put in our names to that school so Karen could work and pay for some of the expenses we would have living there. I would not have to raise as much money to be able to go there. So we decided to put our names into their hat, and they sent us to Armenia. And I never thought about Armenia before, but so far it's been a good fit. It's been difficult to get to know people. It's a new place, but things are starting to develop, and this year was a very good year up until about the middle of March. And then, anyway, we'll talk about all the things that happened there, and that's going to be a bad habit. Okay, so we returned in the summer, last summer, and of course, Paul, you'll see him. He was with us for 2 years, and he graduated this last June, and so he came back with us. Very difficult to move a teenager clear across the world, and he struggled the first year, but he did fine. A lot of mission groups will say, "Don't do that. You cannot bring your teenager along with you. That had so many problems. They won't even allow missionaries to go." Of course, we kind of went ourselves, so no one could tell us no. But Paul did good. He did great, and so he'll be a part of this body coming up here in about a month. Now, this man here, this is Armen Grigoryan. He's my right-hand man now. And last year I did not have, the first year we were there, I did not have such a person. But now I do, and he's been just great, very, very big help. But he was kind of milling around last year a little bit and listened to the teaching I had, strong emphasis on grace, and he was listening. And when we came back, he was ready, and he started to spend a lot more time with us. I joke, the first year after living there in Armenia, my best friend, after a year's worth of ministry in Armenia, was the taxi driver. He's still a faithful friend, but now we've got some more friends. That's good, and Armen is one of them. He knows, of course, Russian very well, excellent Russian speaker. We usually speak in Russian, but he also knows English. He can translate theological material. He does have some training, and if he can sit and read it and think about it, he does a good job. So Armen's been very helpful, and someone he's opened doors for us to have ministries in different places, which I will show you. Armenia is a very small country. It's not very big again. Very mountainous. I would say it's like New Mexico, northern New Mexico in the mountains, the Rockies there, maybe northern Arizona. The latitude, I think, is pretty similar. The weather's almost identical. It's hot in the summer. It's got 4 seasons. It's a beautiful place. They do have their own language. They're very proud of that. It's very beautiful. A Christian missionary actually developed the Armenian language. They got 38 letters, 39. That's a real problem. And the capital letters are so different than the small letters. You have to learn 80, basically. And anyway, I have not spent time with this at all. The Russian has helped me, directly to be able to talk to them. Plus, I'm doing lots of different things, and I'm doing doctoral studies at Dr. House. I just don't have the time, and I don't know how long we'll be able to stay there. So at this point, I have not studied the Armenian language, but if we continue, looks like we'll stay there, then we'll have to do something with that. But again, very beautiful. It was developed for missionary purposes. So that the man that was developed, he was a Christian guy. He used it to basically evangelize the whole country. And they become a Christian nation thanks to this person. They had no written language of their own. Of course, they probably used a trade language like Greek or something like that to talk with other people back in those days before then. Now, this year, consistently was good. We had more consistency in terms of ministry, but we always had things kind of going on here and there. But this year, we had more consistency, so I taught in 2 different churches once a month for a couple hours, which is really good. And I think for a missionary to go into a new place and be able to have some kind of consistent mission like that, it's not easy to do. So that was really good. And plus, we also developed a DM2 we did with Galatians. So that went on week by week. And so that went very well. Those are consistent things we had in Armenia. Plus, I'll show you some other things we did. Here's a town called Merkashats, which means many fruits. This is to the north of Armenia. And there was a Pentecostal group. And Armen, again, who I mentioned to before, he's my right-hand man. He got me into this church. And I put together a little booklet called Christ Our Substitute, where, basically the method of our salvation is to the avenue of our salvation, the agency of our salvation, and I mean all of those things, is through the substitutionary work of Jesus Christ on the cross. So he died on the cross. What does that mean? Okay, we have terms like redemption. Jesus purchased us. He bought us. Propitiation. God's justice was satisfied on the cross, so that when he forgives us, he can do so without compromising his character. And of course, you have words like reconciliation. We were enemies of God. Now we are friends with God. We have a relationship with God. And so we explain these terms. What do they mean? Justification. I can be justified through the work of Christ, the cross. Jesus on the work on the cross, his death, his resurrection. So this book explains those things, and kind of a nice summary. It's now a DM2 book as well. And so we were going to teach this, and they're a Pentecostal group, and they actually enjoyed. I gave like a summary of this. People were listening. The pastor was paying attention. And after we got done, of course, they wanted me to lay hands and zap everybody, which I didn't do. So maybe that got me in trouble. I don't know. So they told me afterwards that the pastor said, well, when God tells me that he wants you back, he'll tell me. So we're waiting for him. And so we'll see. This is part of the problem with the Pentecostal stuff. They want everything to be miracles. And this church needs the cross. Every church needs the cross as a foundation for their lives. You need to explain this. Matthew 28, you need to make disciples of the world, baptizing them, which is part of the teaching process. You teach them about the death and resurrection of Christ, because baptism stands for death and resurrection. We go under the water, we died with Christ, we come back out, we've been raised with him. Okay, and so our job is to train people to make disciples of the nations. And those people need the cross. They need the resurrection. And so anyway, hopefully we can go back someday. And Armain, we saw him recently again, and he was very friendly and said, yeah, we'll have you back. But again, he's still waiting for God to tell him. So maybe some other ways we can have God tell him. Maybe pray for that as an idea if you can remember to do so. But we did have Galatians, the DM2 Galatians, once a week. So we did that. We got that started, and that was going really well. It was starting to pick up speed. We started with getting more young people interested in this. And then, of course, COVID hit, and then here's my COVID signal, cancel it. It came to an end. So that's over. At least for now. I don't know if we can recover it. We'll try. We'll pray for this, and maybe so. But what I've been doing is that when we got to Armenia, of course, my wife is teaching at the international school. My son Paul, our son Paul, went there and for a couple of years, and that was free tuition, another benefit of being a teacher there, which is a good thing. So then I would go to different places. I could use Armenia as a base of operations. I can go to Ukraine, which we lived there for 6 years, or I can go to Belarus. I can go to Siberia, which we've got ministries, there in different places, different locations. That was my plan, and then try to develop things in Armenia as well. So in September, we went to a place called Nikolaev, which is in southern Ukraine. It's not too far from where they're having the war situation, which is, again, not good. That's not improving. It's no better than it was when it all broke out some 5, 6 years ago. So it's something to pray about in Ukraine. Very difficult time. So we went to Nikolaev. The pastor there is actually a chaplain. He goes to the front lines on occasion, and he was telling me how bad it was. The morale is so bad because the odds are so astronomical, and there's no answers to their problem. There's just, they're just sitting there. So anyway, we were invited. This man knows Jim Myers, and I know him too. We know him from when we started the Bible college many years ago. He never went to our Bible college, but Jim knew him from before, Campus Crusade, some other things. So he is now a pastor of a church in Nikolaev, and he saw the things we were doing with DM2. He says, why don't you guys come on down to our church down in Nikolaev? So we did, had a great time, and here we have Vasya Chiplaev. He was our graduates last year from the Bible College in Kiev, so he helped us. Vasya Munko, he's the pastor of Lviv Bible Church in Lviv, and he was one of our first graduates in the Bible College. So we all teamed up and went down there and had a great time. We did Galatians 1-3. We were supposed to go back in May, but again, of course, that was put to an end, canceled because of the coronavirus panic. What was good, though, very interesting, is that Vasya Chiplaev and also Vasya Munko, he's taking the picture, you can't see it, but they, from Nikolaev, I had to go back to Yerevan, Armenia, but they stayed back, and they went to another town not far from Nikolaev to kind of scout things out. They knew a few people. There's a pastor there that's kind of struggling. He's got 3 different churches in the area. And so Vasya Munko made a little presentation on Galatians, introduction to the book, and they said, maybe we can do DM2 Galatians in the future. And he said, well, sure. we'll think about it. Let's make a plan. Maybe sometime in January after our crops are, we don't have to worry about farming anymore. You guys can come see us. So that was the plan. And actually, it was a great plan, and things went really well when they finally get there. I'll explain it to you what happened later. Now, back in Yerevan, I'm back there, and at that time, Jim Myers was in town. So many of you know Jim Myers, and I worked with Jim Myers now for 25 years. We first met him in Belarus, and we became good friends there. We worked with him at the church that was developed there in Mogilov, and also the Bible college there. Then, of course, Jim moves to Ukraine after that. We worked with Jim closely for 6 years. And even when we started the church in Olympia, Washington, after we went back home, I still went to Kiev twice a year. Yeah, we started a little Bible college in Kiev, and we had people coming in and out, Americans to teach. And of course, I went twice a year because our roots are there in terms of the foundations of the things that were going on there. Very good. So I still made an effort to be a part of that ministry. And so Jim, now interesting enough, he was with me in Armenia. So now I guess the reversal here. What's interesting is that this church you see here, Ron Minton is a friend of Jim Myers, and he's recently opened up a Bible college in Yerevan to where students will meet like 4 times a year. There'll be like a 2-week module, and Jim and Ron Minton are friends. And we had no idea this was true when we moved to Armenia, and we can walk to this church, so this basically became our home church. We've been there every week. We've been faithful to be a part of their congregation. And so very interesting. Jim came in and taught dispensations. We had really good teachers this year at the Bible college. Last year, some of the teachers were kind of weak. Had some problems doctrinally here and there. This year, all the teachers were very good. It really helped this church a lot. So this church needs some help. And so they provided dispensations. People love that. Of course, Mike Erickson came in. He taught the Pentateuch later on. Did a good job with that. Vitalik, he's from Rovna, Ukraine. And of course, Jim knows him very well. So he's a really good guy. He did a good job with 1 Corinthians. And then I was able to teach Romans in the spring. I'll explain what happened here. Very interesting. I had a great time. Edward Mirzo, and he's the pastor. So he was the man that runs that church. It's a small church. It's not very large. But again, we've been faithful to go there. And our last couple of years, finally, we're starting to see some dividends that are being paid to help out with that church. Now, here we have a place. We went to Sadarapat Battle Memorial Site, and Alex was there too later on, and Rachel went there too when they came to visit us around Christmas time. But this is a very famous battle site for Armenians because at the end of World War I, or May 1918, toward the end of it, there was a battle in which the Armenian Turks were going to go all the way through Armenia and just wipe them out completely. They already destroyed Western Armenia. They killed 1.5 million people. A lot of people left. A lot of people were sent off to concentration camps. Most people died on the way. It was all like getting ready for the Holocaust. It's the same type of practices they did with the Armenians in World War I that later happened to the Jewish people in World War II. But very interestingly enough, on May 1918, the Armenians beat the Ottoman Turks in one day. One day at this site. And by the way, Churchill lost his reputation after World War I because he lost to the Ottoman Turks. And, there's a Battle of Gallipoli. Some of you have heard of the battle. Well, that lasted for a year and a half. The Allies lost that war, that battle. And Churchill was blamed for it. So after the Armenians beat the Ottoman Turks in one day, Churchill was, what's going on? Okay. What happened? How did they do this? And then the Ottoman Turks thought that they got lucky, so they tried some other place, and they got beat in one day again at another location. Ever since that time, they've let the Armenians alone. So that country is still there. So a very famous battle site, very important for Armenian history. And here you can see the memorial they set up. There's Dr. Erickson. We took him. Armen Grigoryan is also there, so he's also always with us. He's always so helpful and just been a super guy. So then in October, we got plans in October. So this time, instead of going to Ukraine, we went to Belarus. And we did DM2, 1 Corinthians 1-7 in Mogilov. And some of you know of our stint in Mogilov in Belarus. And so we had a really good time there. We're starting to do some things there we weren't able to do before. The country is opening up. By the way, Belarus in Europe is the only country that really did not shut down at all. They did nothing with this coronavirus. They can't afford to, number one. Second, we can't afford it either. Okay. Of course, now our debt's even huger than it was before. It was already in trillions of dollars. Now it's way up there, which I didn't which I don't want. I mean, it doesn't represent anything that I believe. I mean, I have to keep my wallet, I got to pay attention to what's going on here before I do anything. But the government doesn't have to. They can do whatever they want without consequences. And now we're beginning to see the outfall of this. The consequences will come. They will come. At some point, payday's coming. Yeah, we need to be in prayer for our country, but Belarus did nothing. Right now, today, they're 85% out of this recovery rate. They did nothing. 500 people, not quite that, died. Sweden did almost the same, even they did a little bit more than Belarus. They had thousands of people die because there's a practice that's going on that's very evil that I don't understand. Happened in New York and the Northeast as well. They put COVID patients right into nursing homes. So basically, nursing homes became euthanasia centers. All over Europe, Spain, Italy, Sweden, also New York. That's where a lot of the deaths are shown. A good half of them are coming from that practice. They started to stop it because people started to complain about it. So now the numbers have kind of come way down now. Lots of evil stuff going on today. I don't understand anything that's going on here. None of this makes any sense to me. But it is what it is. I have no payday's coming, like I said. Consequences eventually do show up, and we're starting to see some of these things. So Belarus is doing okay. And that's how we got home, was through Belarus, back door. We had to fly from Yerevan to Minsk, from Minsk to Paris, from Paris to Atlanta, and then we had to get another ticket from Atlanta to Dallas, and then Dallas to Portland. That's how we got home. And we have to go back the same way. Anyway, pray for us. I don't know if Atlanta will still be there when we get there. They're having troubles too. Hopefully that we'll be there in a couple of weeks. Anyway, Belarus, going great. I had a really good time there. What I did is that, here's Misha, the engineer. He was there at the very beginning, and he was pastoring that church a little bit as well, but he did a really good job teaching through the material and very helpful. And then, of course, Vasha Munko from Lviv Bible Church. He did an internship after he graduated from the Bible College in Kiev. We sent him up to Mogilov to help them up there. So they know him very well, and they love him. And so he was also with us. We had a great time. So what happened is that I went to Mogilov and then was there for the weekend. And then during the week, we went to Russia. So I went to St. Petersburg, a vacation. Karen had some time for a week off. We took Paul to see the Venice of the north, and it was just beautiful. So St. Petersburg, very soft, very beautiful place. We saw the Hermitage, unbelievable, mostly art. That's the Tsar's palace. That's a house. It's where they used to live. This is part of the reason why the Communist Revolution was so bad, is because they saw how the Tsars were living, and so people got angry with this. This is just one house. And this is just one side of it. This thing's huge. And again, mostly art, so here they are, they're enjoying life and buying art, And the bottom floor, Titus Kennedy needs to see the bottom floor of this, the Hermitage, the statues of the Greco-Roman period are flawless. So it's like when we were in Athens, remember, they all had broken pieces to them. Those in the Hermitage were perfect. So it's like they bought them. They took them, whatever it was, and they had the best of the best. So all the same stuff we saw in Athens, they're there in the Hermitage at the bottom floor, but it's all in good condition. Very interesting. They had the money to do it. So then after that, so I'm in Russia, so let's just Karen goes back home go back to school with Paul, so I go to Siberia. We have a group that's there, another church there, Vladimir Vova, Zuev, his wife is Elena, and they both graduated in the Bible College 4 or 5 years ago, and they have a church in Siberia. So he works with a pastor there, and he does a lot of teaching. A very good story because Vladimir he stutters. He has a problem when he speaks, and now he's teaching all the time. And the DM2 material, by the way, really helped him. Plus, he had to translate for me one time. I still can't teach in Russian. I'm just not there. It's getting better all the time, but I'm still not able to teach. Although I did have to teach a couple times in Armenia, in Russian because the translator showed up late. And then they're going to translate into Armenian there. But anyway, he got confidence that he could actually speak. He had something to say. He absorbed our teaching, our doctrine, our emphasis on grace. And so it was unique, it was different. And so he started to get more confidence. Now he's teaching all the time. That's a really good story. And so we went to Siberia to teach Proverbs. So I put together a Proverbs series. It's all done now, 31 chapters, a huge task. Took me 2 to 3 years to get that done, 3 years. And so now we have a DM2 material in Proverbs. So all throughout the entire book, more like an exegetical outline of the book. And anyway, we enjoyed teaching that. Great time. Here's the pastor. Sasha is his name. Lots of good questions, really good time, and special time in Siberia. So just to get you an idea of what's going on when I'm trying to... This is why I don't like COVID, because I can't do this anymore. That's why I know this is of the devil. I'm being restricted, and of course a lot of people are, a lot of Christians. So then I went back to Mogilov for that last weekend. We did more 1 Corinthians to finish up, so got up to chapter 7, then I went back to Yerevan, home for a week. Then we go back to Ukraine. And so I taught at the Bible college, and as normally, this year I taught 3 times this year, because I'm close by. And so I taught anthropology and hamartiology, man and sin. You know, we're sinners, we're fallen, yet we're made in the image of God. How do you explain this? Well, Proverbs, my study in Proverbs really helped me prepare for that class, because you look at the Hebrew, it's amazing. All of the physical descriptions that Solomon gives, describing, foolishness and wisdom, basically sin and righteousness. What do you use your body for? We're made in God's image. Sometimes I kind of wonder about these masks. I just think about it. It's like Satan wants to cover up the image of God. Something strange like this is going on. But we see all kinds of evil, foolishness in our world, and of course Solomon tells us all about it. What are you supposed to do with your ear? What do you do with that? Your eyes, your nose, even your feet, your hands, slack hands, being lazy, this kind of stuff. So the Hebrew is very physical. A lot of times in English you miss that. And so I kind of brought a lot of these. I had a great time teaching anthropology and sin at the Bible college. However, what was really exciting and really good is that we had all these DMT things going on during the week. So we have like 4 or 5 different teams now in and around the Kiev area of DM2 in different churches. We're doing 5 things at once. And I just kind of pop in and out, So we got guys that are doing workshops in different churches, in different places. We've got 2 going on in Kiev. We have 1 in Irpin. We have 1 which is to the west of Kiev. We have 1 in Badashivka to the east of Kiev, about an hour. Another one in Sinkovka, which is like a half hour away from Kiev to the east. And it's just a super time. And so we got our graduates. We're putting those guys to work. They're teaching this. People are growing as they study the material that they have to teach. Then we have the people that are coming. They're doing good. And then, of course, I can come in and out and help them and encourage them. So we did a lot of things. So we did Colossians, for example, 3 and 4, chapters 3 and 4 in Kiev at the Word of God Church there that was established by Jim Myers. Then I did Christ Your Substitute in Irpin. We did Proverbs in Badashivka, and I have a long history with that church about an hour east of Kiev. We did Hebrews, chapters 1 to 4 in Sinkovka, which is a sister church of the church in Badashivka. Then a new church opened to us in Kiev, 1 Corinthians. We started with them. So again, just had a super time. This is what I had envisioned when I started to see where things were going, why we decided to go back to the mission field. So when I'm there in Kiev now, I'm teaching every night. I'm teaching all day long, and I'm teaching every night. This goes on for 2.5, 3 weeks, and it's just unbelievable what's happening. It's good. They're all small groups. There's not like some revival of some kind, but it's really good. So here we have Colossians 3 and 4 in Kiev. Here's that new church that opened to us, Regeneration Church, and the pastor of this church is right here. Jim helped me with this because Roman Ovcharenko was at the seminary, Kiev Theological Seminary, when we taught there many years ago. And he remembers both Jim and I teaching especially. He says, you guys were the best teachers, and I still remember had a big impact on my life. And so he saw the things we were doing with DM2 on Facebook. He says, why don't you come to our church? So we've established a relationship with him. And this church now, they're full of young people, which is really exciting. And they've really opened up to God's grace, and we're just really excited to be there. And so they want now more and more to do more things with them. So that's really good. So here's the Bible college. So I taught every day there, anthropology, hamartiology. Anthropology, of course, that's a study of man from the Bible. And hamartiology, that's sin. Hamartia, the Greek word for sin. So we discussed man and sin. Of course, they come together, unfortunately, today, thanks to the fall of mankind, as we studied in great detail. So then I went home, and then after that, I went back to Yerevan, and then Jim Myers came back, so we can't get enough of him. So he came to Armenia, and I introduced Jim to a church that I teach at once a month. It's a church that's coming out of Pentecostalism, and they want more of God's Word, and they really enjoyed Jim's teaching. So they asked Jim to come back and do a spiritual life conference. So we did that for like 3-4 nights. I kicked it off, and I just handed everything over to Jim, and just a super time. And there you see our main Grigoryan. He's there helping Jim as well. So he's just really been a good guy. Really helped us tremendously. Again, the groups are not large, but we've got some faithful people. Pastor Abram Tashian, we'll see him up there in the small picture there. That's him. He's also he has a beautiful voice, singer, and he has hundreds of thousands of people listen to him on YouTube. I mean, he's an amazing voice, and just a very interesting church and a very interesting guy. Come Christmas time, Rachel came to see us, and Alex came to see us, and then also Karen's sister, my sister-in-law, Christy, she came to see us. We had a really good time for Christmas. And Armenia has their own church. They call it the Armenian Apostolic Church. They're not Orthodox, they're not Catholic. Don't insult them by telling them that they are, even though I think they are. It looks the same to me, but they have some differences. One of their problems, they believe that Jesus is a mixture of deity and humanity. That's a problem, because if Jesus is a mixture, he represents nobody, and he can't be your substitute. He has to be fully God, fully man, and there has to be some separation to represent both parties equally and perfectly. And when Jesus becomes a mixture, there is no mixture between God and man, and who does he represent now? That's a problem. So anyway, that's one of the distinctions. I came across a book at one of their museums last year, and it says, Why We Reject Chalcedon. This is the Armenian church. Chalcedon talks about the two natures of Christ, his deity and fully God, fully man, and they reject the Chalcedon statement. Very interesting. Here is the papal residence. Of course, the Pope. They don't have a Pope, but they call him the Catholicos. Catholic means universal. He's like the universal leader of Armenia. So he runs the religious side of Armenia from this residence. And here we got to get Titus in to inspect this. This supposedly is the spear of Christ that killed Jesus, supposedly. So that they have this on hand. I don't know. I mean, of course, it's a legend. It's possible that they could have it. Supposedly, Thaddeus and you'll see this next picture. Bartholomew were there evangelizing at the end of during the first century. Supposedly a piece of Noah's Ark on the one side there. I don't know. It's a petrified piece of wood. That's obvious. You look at it. The story goes that Gregory the Illuminator, he's the one who initially also evangelized Armenia back in the early 300s. And he climbed Mount Ararat, and he got tired, and he woke up, and he fell asleep, and he woke up, and the angels gave him this piece of wood. Then he brought it back down and told him what happened and helped him to evangelize Armenia. So that's how the legend goes. I mean, I don't know how true that is, of course. It's possible he just went up there and found a piece of wood and brought it back down. In those days, you had to verify, through miracles. That's how things were done. We think this is odd, but in those days, that's how they did it. And of course, they would also build churches right over the top of the place they were trying to protect it. They did it to protect it, not because they were interested in trying to destroy the site. Today, archaeologists say, you guys have just wiped everything out. But that's how they did it back then. They had a little different mentality on how they tried to save things. So again, is it Noah's Ark? I have no idea. Interesting, though, that they still bring it up. Of course, Noah's Mountain is right there. It dominates their city. Supposedly, this king, he was living during the time of Christ. He sent a letter to Jesus, supposedly. And he died, and they commemorate this man because he had an interest in Jesus Christ. Of course, it's Christmas time, and here we have a manger seat, life-size. You walk in their churches. If you want to make holy water, this is how you do it. You get a mixture of stuff. I don't know what the ingredients are, and they put it all together, and then you put it outside, let the sun bake on it, and then it becomes holy. And they use that probably for baptisms, funerals, weddings. Of course, what's the difference? I don't know between all those things sometimes. But they do, and they like those things. So here's some of the leaders, and these are definitely the leaders of the church. They had some special thing when we were there, and I don't know who they are by name, but they are the most important people that run that church. Here's the real police that people should be worried about, and they will come if they get rid of the police that we have now. Armenia, most of the Soviet Union after it collapsed became basically police states run by the mafia. And Armenia was that until a couple of years ago. And then they had a revolution, and they set aside that post-Soviet, the Soviet guys are getting older. That's part of the problem. So they're starting to lose their grip on power. And, so then when there was an opportunity, people grabbed it, and they set aside the post-Soviet evil mafia police state for a time. And by the way, if we would have gotten to Armenia a couple of years ago, these guys would be crawling all over us. Especially me. My wife would be fine, but they'd be talking to me regularly. What are you doing here? Yeah, you don't need to be doing that. I mean, just all kinds of advice. We had a lot of that stuff when we lived in Mogilov. The police would, they kept us running through hoops, all kinds of interesting stuff. Of course, here you got police and state religion together. That's an interesting combination. Anyway, our police are supposed to be separate, right, from separation of church and state. That's a Protestant value. People have forgotten that. As you get rid of that Protestant value, and once you start mixing them together, it's going to be corruption. And of course, the state that's coming now, this religious state that we have, the mysticism is just crazy what's happening. You can just see the madness in our society, where people are going. So again, here's these leaders. We went back home. Of course, here's our home. It's unbelievable, fancy, because the school pays for our place to live. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring Karen with me. We have a place to live, and they pay for it. It's free of charge. So that's all good. I don't have to pay for ministry expenses. Don't have to pay for a place to live. That's really good. We live on one side. The other side is a diplomat family. This is a community full of diplomats and business people. They're very secular, but interesting. Karen was granted, by God's grace, a ministry opportunity. He has a couple of them there. I'll tell you about them later. Here's Lake Savon, way up in the mountains, a beautiful time. We went up there, and wintertime, we could get up there. It was a very mild winter up until about February. And Armen Grigoryan got me up into a home Bible study up in Lake Savon, and we were with this group right here. They wanted to keep on going. We started Christ Our Substitute with them, and they really enjoyed it. And right after that, we had snow after that, every week, and then COVID. So that came to an end, at least for now. Hopefully we can recover it in the future. However, the best thing of the year, in my opinion, that happened is that, remember I told you about that group in Natalina from Nikolaev. They went to Natalina, that farming area where Vasya Cheplaev and Vasya Munko, they went there. So they actually led Galatians 1-3. And this area was infested with legalism. It was terrible. I mean, they were keeping the law, trying to keep the Mosaic law. I mean, this and that and the other thing. The pastor knew something was wrong, didn't know how to battle it because he didn't have the... Is that thing supposed to be like that? Bugging me here. Maybe like so. I don't know. Sorry. Anyway, so they actually led it, and the pastor was really happy because they were getting some answers. The first 2 chapters, first 2 days, they fought them, what they were doing with legalism versus grace, and then after that, the people started to warm to God's grace. And then by the time they got to the end of chapter 3, the people were sold. They were sold by it. And Vasya Munko went there, Vasya Cheplaev, but also pastors Zhenya Savchenko and Badashevka went there. And he's a super teacher. He's our best teacher. He's our very first graduate from the Bible college. He can teach the Word of God very easily. He's a gifted teacher. And so they went down there, got through some rough patches, and then by the time it was done, it went great. And then the pastor said, can I teach the rest of Galatians 4-6? I'll just use the material. And they said, sure. Then they invited us to go back to teach Hebrews, but of course COVID hit, and so that came to an end. So they want to do Hebrews now, but still, great time, and we're hoping to go back there sometime in the future. Now, while that was going on, Armen got me to another group up in another town called Norhachin to the north of Yerevan, and we introduced Christ Our Substitute. We had a great time with this little group, and they were really interested, and we went week by week, and we got through half the material, and then, of course, the COVID thing put a stop to that as well. This is why I know it's of the devil, folks, okay? We were starting to see things happen that were really good. And then it went back to Lviv, and that was going to go back to the Bible college. I started in Lviv. We did Proverbs 10-16 because we've been doing that for the last couple of years and had a good time there, good group. really our DM2 center is now in Lviv. And Rachel played a part with that too, because they did Women in the Word there. Rachel had a much bigger crowd than I ever. Usually when I show up, the numbers get down. That's why I'm trying, what's going on here this morning? I don't understand this. It's, usually when I show up, the numbers get smaller. But today I show up, the numbers get bigger. It's something strange going on here. Anyway, DM2 Center is in Lviv. Vash is really taking it on, and the church is growing. It was a small church for many years, and now it's starting to grow. And now we have three different church groups are going consistently to our DM2s now in Lviv, and also Lviv is really leading, going down to, they went down to Natal and did it all by themselves, which is what DM2 is supposed to do. So it took this thing moves up. That's the problem. My ear is too small or something. Or I don't know what that is. I don't like this. I hate this stuff, really. I have to be honest with you. That's why I don't like it. It just gets in the way. Anyway. So it's just really going good. And so we taught Proverbs there. Here's the group of teachers. So we have these types of teaching groups everywhere now in Ukraine. So we have several of them in the Kiev area. We've got one in Lviv. And hopefully we can develop one maybe in Nikolaev, for example. We got a new group that wanted to open up to us in Chernigiv. Again, that was canceled because we couldn't get up there. So anyway, and then we use our graduates to do all this. So we're giving them some good Bible training. They need to put this to work. So I went back to Kiev, and then from Kiev, again, I'm doing my Bible college, but we're also continuing our DM2s in different churches. At Badashivka, we did Proverbs. Here we see Vasily Molnar. He is the founder of that church many years ago, back in the 90s, and I first started ministering there a number of years ago, back in the 90s as well. And this guy, he fought me a little bit on grace, but he wanted me to teach, and so I taught him the cross, very similar to what we're doing now, but today it's much more depth and much more detail. And anyway, over time and through a lot of problems, he realized that grace was the answer, and now he's just doing a super job. He's no longer the pastor. His wife sadly left him, and he's got 5 kids, and so he says, I can't be a pastor anymore. But Zhenya Savchenko, he is now the pastor, and what happened there? I lost it. So how do I get it back? Anybody know? I see nothing here that would help me. There's no tab that... It's that one. Yeah, well, it'll take a while, I suppose. Anyway, so Zhenya Savchenko was our very first graduate, and now he's doing a good job in Badashivka. I'll probably go back to the first one. Yeah.
Oh, so we can go down to where are you at?
Oh, we're close to the end now. Let's see here. I got to see a picture. Right there. Yeah. So you can see Zhenya right there. Something with that picture there. See, it's an evil picture. Yeah.
The next one.
Let me go back. It's close.
What is that picture?
Okay, so we'll just forget that picture.
Forget that one.
Okay, we'll just leave it. Yeah.
Okay.
Very interesting. Okay.
With the thing on the side? Okay. Thank you, Rachel. She's good. Oops. Yeah, like that. Yeah. So you just go to the next. Go ahead.
Press it here.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. I see.
Yeah.
Just do it like that. You can see the full picture then?
Yeah, they can see it. It's a little small, but they can see it.
Okay, there's Zhenya. Okay, right there. So anyway, so now we'll move on. I'm sorry about that. Second one, then he has a friend, Gena Sinchenko. So it's not going to work. I think we're done. Yeah, we're done here. So anyway, very similar. Yes, just like COVID, it's over. And, it's kind of the story of my life since March. But very interesting. We had a great time. In March, and then our son Paul came, and so because Karen was supposed to do go to Tbilisi, Georgia, to do a conference there, and so she had to go there supposedly, and then we had an early version of this. We're pretty sure it was a coronavirus back in February because Paul came home on the bus, and the whole bus got this thing, whatever it was. And everybody was out, and then it spread throughout the whole school. Half the school was out, half the teachers were out. It was also up in Georgia, so they had to cancel everything. And Karen had this thing for 2 to 3 weeks, 14 to 15 different symptoms, all the COVID symptoms that supposedly were related to COVID. And of course, that was before testing. I'm looking at Paul, as sick as a dog. I've never seen him so sick. And then hearing the news come out of China, I'm thinking, does he have this stuff? So we didn't know, and I'm not going to bring him in a foreign country to get tested in a situation like that. So anyway, they got over it, and they did fine. And then Karen's stuff got canceled, but then we had these tickets because Karen was supposed to be out of town, and Paul can't be home, and I was supposed to be in Kiev. So he came with me, really enjoyed Ukraine. He didn't, he was with me the whole time, and he really had a great time. And then as we left on March 17th, that night, 16th, 17th, it was the last night. Kiev was about ready to shut down. We were one of the last flights out. And as we arrived in Yerevan, Armenia, Kiev airport was closed down. It's just recently starting to open up now again. And then as we got into Yerevan, everything stopped there too. So the Lord allowed us to come home and never had to change tickets. We got everything done we wanted to in Ukraine at that time in the middle of March. And so that went really super. And then we came back, and of course now everything is shut down. So anyway, Armenia was shut down for like a month. I had lots of things to do with Dr. House and his classes, doctoral classes. It was not a problem. But then Armenia had no cases really, very small, very minimal. So they started to open up. They can't afford this shutdown either, so they started to open up. And once they opened up, I told the college that, and the airport was still closed. I said, well, I was supposed to teach Romans in September. Let's do it now. The guy that was supposed to come in can't fly in. Let's just teach Romans now. So we did that, and that went super. We taught Romans there, very responsive. You could see the atmosphere of the church has changed a lot, especially since that time. And then the second week, this is my concern, the pastor, he doesn't know who we are, but he walked up to me the second week and he says, last night I just cried because I realized that I don't know these things that you're teaching in Romans, and I should as a pastor. I didn't know about God's grace, the depth of it, where what it's all about, how grace leads to righteousness. These were things that he never really understood. If you don't understand that, grace leads to salvation, holiness, righteousness, you're going to teach legalism in order to straighten people out. It's a given. And so he didn't understand those things, and he just told me this. I was so glad that you came in and taught this class. So I think we got the pastor. Next week, he taught something on Galatians 5 and did very good with that. And so I'm hoping that our faithfulness and the Lord's grace and all those things kind of came together to be able to have an impact with that church. Top stories here. We can look at, how about that? Yeah, here, take it. Yeah. Get that thing out of here. That's just so anyway, so I was really thankful for that, and really good. However, they got a little carried away, and they had barbecues 2 weeks in a row, and the pastor came down with COVID, and he shared it with the whole church, and this time it was confirmed. And I was with him all day. He had COVID, didn't even know it, and he knew he had something, but he didn't think it was COVID because he had the same thing Karen and Paul had back in February. And this second round was nothing compared to what they had back in February. And so he didn't think he had it. So I'm with him all day, but he had it. And of course, we shared it with the people. We had a ministry, went up to the mountains, had a good time. I wanted to show you the pictures of that, a shepherd community that he brought me to. Armaine did this as well. But also one of the guys was from he went to the Romans conference, the Romans class we did. And he has a group up in the mountains that are shepherds where they're called the Yazidis. Some of you may have heard of the Kurds, right? The Kurdish people. Well, most Kurds are Muslims. However, there's one group up there in Armenia, they worship Satan directly, and they're called the Yazidi. And they have a temple nearby. I taught, within a quarter of a mile of this temple up there in the mountains in a small cabin with these shepherds. Taught them John 3. And they became Christians and had a really good time with those shepherds up there. And so the Yazidi people, another group that, they have their own temple. Of course, they have a huge temple, Satan's temple down near the Echmiadin, where the so-called Vatican of the Armenian Church is located in that same town. And people came from all over the world when that place opened up. Beautiful place, beautiful location, where Satan dwells. Politicians from Europe and America all went there to go see that place when it opened up. And they worship Satan directly. That just tells you where we're going, okay? It's not good with, we've got politicians headed there and we wonder, well, why are things the way they are now? Well, I think that would, like a little indicator. So that went well, and of course the COVID started to get out of control a little bit. Most people were fine, they got sick. One person, Karen, got it again, and this was confirmed, but again, with Karen and with the pastor, the very mild. So my surmising is that what happened, Karen and Paul got the Wuhan special in February, and then in May it was nothing compared to what they already had. It's like a version from Europe, like a cousin, and so they came over it got over it pretty quickly. It still lasted a long time, but the symptoms weren't as bad. So when we came home, we had to quarantine for 2 weeks here when we first got back because of that. Anyway, one guy at the church got really sick. So our mission paid $700 for him to get better, to get medicine. So he took it, he started to get better right away. So I use that as an example. That's a microcosm of how you face the virus. It costs us $700, not trillions. Okay, and now they've been through it. Okay, the people it's already done its thing, and it's over for them. And that's what needs to take place. You want to get over it. You can't sit and hide in home and wait for this thing just to disappear and go away. That's a fantasy. It's not going to happen. We've never stopped a virus in the history of mankind. We're not doing that today. It's not happening. So the virus is just waiting for people to go back to work. That's all. That's it. It's got to go through people. It has to have a host. That's how viruses work. It's not going to go away until it's done its thing. I'm sorry. Ecclesiastes, we read, it's a grievous task which the Lord has given the sons of men. And Paul also says, by the way, if you don't work, you don't eat. And he said that in the face of the apocalypse, as he discussed the imminent apocalypse. It could be at any moment. People quit going to work. They were being persecuted, and they started to be idle. By the way, everybody's idle, especially our government, especially Google. They got nothing to do, so they're watching us all the time. That's why this stuff is driving me crazy. They're idle. They become busybodies. And that's bad. I mean, who has time for that? I don't have time for that. Do you? They do. Paul says it's not good. Get back to work. It's in 2 Corinthians. 2 Thessalonians. Did I say Corinthians? I'm sorry. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. Paul says get back to work. So anyway, we had a really good time. And then I also taught through Zoom Hebrews. In the spring, we had a lot of cancellations. And then we came home. Paul got graduated. Karen had a very interesting opportunity as well, where she was able to, because of the COVID crisis, interesting, one diplomat family asked Karen to teach Sunday school at their house every Sunday. So she's been doing that, been going really good, 4 kids. And then she also put up a advertisement for the WOW, Women of the Word, into the mailboxes at the school. And one lady said, yes, I want to take it, and she just loved the material. So, just a very good year. So just to let you know what's going on in Armenia, and we had a good time, Ukraine, Belarus, and Siberia as well, and we hope to return, hope to recover some of these ministries. Please pray we can get these things recovered. We were having a really good time. Doors were opening up for us, hearts were opening up to us. A lot of things going on in Ukraine, and we just need to get those ministries up and going again if we can. So I don't know. It's just a strange time. I've never seen such madness in my entire life of what's going on right now. Just we need lots of prayer for our own country too, because it's hit us locally here too. So anyway, I'm done. I'm not sure what the protocol here is at the end. I'm sorry for going late. Part of it is because of your computer stuff up here. So anyway, what do? We pray, we sing a song. I'm not sure what's going on. Do you want this too?
No, I don't.
Oh, yeah, I don't believe it. Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Please stand for our last song. We will sing It Is Well With My Soul. Wow. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, ever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Though Satan should buffet, though trial should come, let his blessed assurance control that Christ has regarded my helpless estate and hath shed his own blood for my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. My sin, oh the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin not in part, but the whole is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when the faith shall be sight, the clouds be rolled back as a scroll, the trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
Now to him that is able to keep you from falling, and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy, to the only wise God our Savior, be glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and ever. Amen.